As we all know, Elden Ring has quite the sum of bosses, 238 in the base game alone. Though not every boss is near the same caliber, there's many all-time classics. In this video, I want to switch it up a bit and talk about my 5 favorite bosses in such a behemoth of a game. Not all of them are created equal, but from the soundtrack to the mechanics and the spectacle, every boss stands on its own merits. Here are my 5 favorite from Elden Ring and its DLC. Starting with my number 5 will be the mightiest of the demigods, the Red Lion General himself, Starscourge Radahn. What could I say that hasn't already been said about Radahn? He's practically the face of Elden Ring, only barely trailing behind Malenia and just how iconic they become. Radahn is a great mix of everything that makes such a memorable boss fight. Whether you fought him on release day or months later after his big nerf, he stays a great mid-game challenge for any type of build. Radahn has exactly the kind of build-up you expect for the spectacle they teased in the trailers. The Radahn Festival is a really neat idea and it's totally new to the series. You, and many of the new friends you've made in the Lands Between, are here to take on the challenge of slaying the monstrous general. For decades he's been in a trance-like state, roaming the dunes and devouring anything in his path. After his duel with Malenia many years ago, the kingdom he once ruled has turned to ruin and rot, and he has nothing left. Jaren and the Redmane Knights organize a final hurrah for their old lord, gathering only the strongest of warriors for a battle of the ages, to kill Radahn once and for all. This concept is so cool. I still remember my first time teleporting to the Wailing Dunes and seeing what stood before me. Radahn is huge and imposing. He shoots volleys of arrows at you from the moment you drop in, and you have to scramble for the closest cover. The fight starts with a ferocity expected of the acclaimed general himself. The best mechanic that makes this fight so memorable is the companions you bring with. I typically never summon NPC help for boss fights in these games, since I really enjoy the 1v1 challenge, but Radahn is different. It almost has the energy of a raid boss of sorts, something from World of Warcraft even. With a total of up to 6 summons at a time, many being familiar faces, like the fan favorite Blythe, this time you have an army on your side, and it really does feel like it. Radahn's swords sweep wide and fast to make up for the man advantage you have. He has a ton of health and hits like a truck if you get caught in his combos. Riding around the dunes, jumping off torrent to land devastating blows while your friends draw his aggression will never not be satisfying. He's well balanced, but still a challenge, and right when you think you're getting the hang of it, he enters phase 2. At 50% HP, Radahn shoots into the sky and vanishes. The sun fades away for good, and night truly takes hold. And then out of nowhere, he comes barreling down from the heavens with a meteoric blast. Phase 2 is Radahn using his gravity magic along with his 2 swords. You could almost feel a bit of life come back behind his eyes. He's less sedated, now active, constantly attacking. You could summon more NPCs to help in phase 2, and the battle gets all that bloodier. All the carnage stains the dunes with blood and leaves you in awe of the sheer scale of it all. I love every second of it. His gravity magic makes running away much harder, and you have to constantly keep a close eye on which attacks he'll use, or you might just get sucked into him and hit with a massive strike. It's really impressive how FromSoft is still coming up with new boss ideas in such an old franchise, and they really hit the nail on the head here, and I really hope to see this concept used again in a future entry. Radahn is everything I love about a big monster boss, packaged neatly with a new take on boss design with the raid mechanic, and great lore and reveals to back him up. All of that is why I, and countless others, consider him to be among the best bosses Elden Ring has to offer. Up next, we take the long ascent up the jagged peak to meet everyone's favorite dragon, the Black Dread himself, Bayle. Bayle's an interesting boss in many regards. On one hand, he's a dragon, which FromSoft has quite the shaky history on, as we all know. And on the other, he's everything my younger self would imagine a dragon fight could be in a video game. Bayle's all style, but without lacking substance. The journey to Bayle is quite memorable in itself. It's a total side area in the Lands of Shadow, yet the jagged peak pierces the sky and stares down at you your entire playthrough. Of course you know something's up there, but not exactly what. On your trip up, you'll meet Egon, the dragon hunter, and the best voice actor in the entire game. He urges you to go slay Bayle, the dragon at the peak of the mountain, and of course you listen. The mountain's a bit like Dragon Barrow and Caelid, where dragons are the only real enemies you'll find, but the vibes are on an entire new level. Lightning blasts the mountainside, and the red eerie sky just adds to the ominous dread that awaits. Once you're finally at the top, you're treated to a masterpiece of a battle. Bayle ticks all the boxes that Midir and Placidusax just barely missed for me personally. Though Midir, the previously touted best dragon in Soulsborne, is a great challenge with a cool arena and big damage. He just doesn't click the same for me. I think it really comes down to the type of attacks that are different between the two. Elden Ring differs a lot from Dark Souls 3 in their boss design. In Elden Ring, bosses string together attacks for quite a long while, making the dance a lot more hectic. Bayle's combos are massive, and if you make a mistake, they could easily lead to your death, but that feeling of mastering them and hitting that huge punish is a satisfaction that no other dragon can compare to for me. On any of my playthroughs, the camera was never an issue either, which on big monsters, usually it's harder to deal with than the boss itself. Easy telegraphs and a multitude of long combos make Bayle a thrill to fight. I believe he actually has the most variety of moves from any DLC boss. This makes every subsequent attempt just that much different from the last. Bayle's face transition is absolutely unbelievable. At 60% HP, he starts to charge up. He unleashes a massive explosion and sprouts wings of red lightning. He finally takes to the skies and bombards you with fireballs while circling above, and for his grand finale, comes smashing into the ground, sliding towards you with a flaming claw, looking to kill. This whole sequence is beyond cinematic, and the first time I saw it, I knew he'd be an instant classic. The sheer ferocity of the beast, mixed with his gargantuan health bar, set up for a long fight of endurance and timing. You really can't cheese your way out of this one, so learning to fight, reading the telegraphs, and quick reaction are the only ways you're going to make it out alive. Mix all that with the epic performance of your own personal Captain Ahab, and Bayle is quite the treat. All of this is paired perfectly with really cool lore. Bayle betrayed the ancient dragons, and he had a massive fight with the Dragon Lord himself, Placidusax. You could even see Placidusax's missing head still attached to Bayle, which is a neat little detail. Bayle himself only has 3 legs, so you could only imagine how bloody and brutal their fight was. The Jagged Peak is where he ran to after the defeat, and now you have to put him out for good, and finish the job. I can't wait to see what they're cooking up for the next dragon boss, and if it's anything like Bayle, I am sure here for the ride. Next we go from the tallest peak down to the darkest depths, for the Lord of Blood himself, Mohg. Mohg is just so goddamn cool. Where Radahn and Bayle are all about set pieces and spectacle, Mohg goes back to the tried and true roots of From Software. Mohg is much closer in size of the Tarnished. He has a much smaller arena than the previous two, and he hits like an absolute truck if you aren't close to the recommended level. Mohg's the twin brother to Morgott, cursed as an omen and hidden away deep underground. He's attempting to form his own dynasty, his own order, with him and his brother Miquella at the helm. The dynasty mausoleum is dark, gory, and scary, and the perfect preamble to Mohg himself. When you finally enter his arena, very reminiscent of the Greek Parthenon, he emerges from a pool of Miquella's blood, wielding a massive trident. Despite his stature, he's actually quite quick, and he has a massive reach with that trident of his. He uses Blood Flame to keep the pace of the fight constant. If you try to get out of his range, he'll throw it on you just to close the distance after. His combos aren't nearly as long as the previous 2 entries, but the difference here is just how far-reaching and punishing they are. It makes dodging him so satisfying, because being able to actually finally close the distance is much harder than most fights in Elden Ring. His first phase is tough, but nothing you haven't seen before. But the second phase is on a whole other level. As the beginning of the fight goes on, you notice him chanting numbers as he builds 3 rings up around you, and at 50% HP, you find out exactly why. Mohg's Blood Boon ritual changes the entire pace of the fight, and now he's in control. The ritual has Mohg draining your HP in 3 big thrusts and siphoning it to himself. Once he completes his ritual, his trident gets imbued with blood flame, and large black, raven-esque wings sprout from his back. The cool thing about this whole sequence is how you could actually prevent the HP drain if you explored well previously. If you come across the Purifying Crack tier and put it in your Wondrous Physic, you actually have a way to deny his lifesteal and attack Mohg during this phase. It adds a cool aspect to the fight, where you have the predicament of needing to either use 3 whole flasks during the ritual, or use your Physic if you find the tier. Using the Physic eliminates its other uses throughout the fight though. I love the cool gimmick introduced here, and I hope something like this is done in a future title too, making you gamble on which route to take and how difficult you want the fight to be. After the phase switch, his aggression is in full form. He's swooping down with his wings and spraying blood flame all over the arena. It becomes absolutely insane, not only having to dodge his monstrous swings, but also watch every step to avoid getting trapped in the fire below. Mohg's not too difficult to understand after a few runs, but being able to master the slow, delayed timing and your footwork is a completely different story. All this adds up to a masterpiece of a boss fight, and though he's optional for the base game, I'm really glad they made him mandatory for the DLC. It gives the opportunity for less explorative people and more casual players to find and finally get to face Mohg. I'm sure he'll be remembered for years to come as an icon in From Software history, as he's absolutely one of the best hidden bosses they've ever made. And don't even get me started on his soundtrack. Absolute cinema. Mohg was all challenge but less spectacle. And my final two on this list, I believe without a doubt, are From Software at its peak. And though they could be interchangeable for me, I ended up solidifying them in this order. Number 2 is the Chieftain of the Badlands, the first Elden Lord, and the leader of the Tarnished, Godfrey, otherwise known as Hoarah, Warrior. Godfrey's the only mandatory base game boss on my list, and he earns this spot with flying colors. Everything about Godfrey's perfect, and I want to start from his opening cutscene, which conveys absolutely everything that's so strong about this encounter. You approach Godfrey at the Elden Throne. The capital is ash, the Erd Tree ablaze, and he's the only thing standing before you and whatever waits inside its fiery trunk. Godfrey kneels, holding the emaciated corpse of Morgott, who you killed not too long ago. Morgott is his son, his omened son, who he never had the chance to truly ever love or embrace after being sent away by Queen Marika so long ago. He gives Morgott the shred of dignity and respect he was never able to give before, and his corpse fades away. As the camera zooms out, you see the Grace of Gold, now pointing to you. Godfrey's the first Tarnished. The Grace of Gold has guided him to you, as yours has guided you to him. Only one Tarnished can claim the throne. He never looks down at you, he only sees you as an equal. A gentleman's fight. Two of the strongest warriors left in this world, and only one can survive. This cutscene gives me chills every time I see it, and it leads to the perfect climax of emotions and energy right before the end of the game. And what a fight it is. Godfrey's fierce. He has long, long attack strings, and even requires jumping to dodge at times. It's the best telegraph fight in all of Elden Ring in my opinion, as you dance together as naturally as ever. Every attack is easily punished, with your timing on point, and it begins to feel more akin to a rhythm game than an action game. He's staggerable and punishable, yet the sheer power of his attacks is not to be taken lightly either. And after a picture-perfect first half of the fight to end all fights, things get a whole lot messier. Godfrey tears apart Sarash, the lion meant to hold back his emotions and power, and becomes Hoarah, the warrior from the Badlands he always truly was inside. Now more akin to a wrestler than a soldier, he's relentless. It's even hard to breathe when Hoarah is on your tail, and healing becomes near impossible. And I love every second of it. No longer can you control the pace of the fight with a good idea of his timing. Now you have to play perfectly to escape his wrath. Every hit can be deadly, and if he grabs you, it's almost definitely a death sentence. The second phase of the fight is as vicious as Elden Ring gets, so when you're finally able to get the better of him, it feels all that much sweeter. From an axe-wielding commander to a grappling monster more akin to Zangief, every aspect of this battle just hits the spot. The difficulty is perfectly tuned, the pace is quick, and the context and arena are absolutely stunning. I love Godfrey, and this battle made me fall in love with Elden Ring too. But the first Elden Lord is sadly not first on my list. As you could have guessed if you watched my previous video, that spot goes to the Impaler himself, ruler of the Shadowlands and the forgotten son of the Queen, Messmer. What could I say that countless others haven't already? Messmer is From Software at their peak. It's everything they've been perfecting for years. All aspects of their previous work combined into one. Aggressive, fair, quick, powerful, and mysterious. A package like no other. Messmer being the face of the DLC is very deserved. At first I was a bit confused with the introduction of another child America, but after digging deep, it all really makes sense. Messmer's a tragic character, one more akin to a Dark Souls boss than an Elden Ring boss. He's sad and lost and abandoned in a world he was forced to destroy, used by his mother to commit mass death and desolation to an entire race and culture. He's a man who once had ambition and vigor, now a husk just waiting to die. He's tragic on every level. and when you learn about his curse, it only gets worse. The build up to Messmer is incredible, and I love ascending the Shadow Keep. You could sense the foreboding atmosphere, knowing exactly who awaits you at the top. Messmer has attack strings that flow perfectly into each other, with range, aggression, and style. You have to be patient with him and respect his combos, or you'll face a swift execution. I love the pacing so much in this fight. You get your fair chance at punishing each other's moves, and you each dictate the changing speed of the duel. Messmer has poise that isn't too tough to crack if using heavy weapons, but landing those consistent attacks isn't as easy as it may seem at first. You can't let yourself get too overwhelmed by the fire and ferocity, or you may just misstep. I love this entire phase. He actually gave me a lot of trouble the first time I fought him, but I loved every subsequent attempt. Every single try, you could feel yourself getting better and better. Nothing too annoying or too different, just total boss fight mastery. And then there's a phase switch cutscene, which has him revealing his curse, the Base Serpent, and fully losing control of himself for the first and last time. The snake attacks add a whole new level of cinema to the fight, and somehow don't even really mess with the camera too hard, as you'd expect from FromSoft. He's biting and thrashing around, while shape-shifting back into human form to swing his spear and spin around like the warrior he is. The constant change-up between serpent and man is such a cool gimmick, and it makes you never get bored of the duel. Messmer has it all: an awesome design, great attacks, perfectly sized health pool, incredible cutscenes, and one of the best soundtracks in the game. To me, he's everything I want from a humanoid FromSoft boss, and if there was an entire game with bosses of this quality, I really don't think I'd play anything else. What are your favorite bosses from Elden Ring? I'd love to hear feedback in the comments, whether you agree with my choices or not. There's so many amazing fights to choose from, and narrowing it down was not easy. I really hope Night Rain keeps a consistent quality with their bosses, and that the next single-player focus entry does the same, and even more. I love the direction FromSoft is heading with their boss design, even though it may be controversial, and I think they're cooking up something even better for their next installment. Thank you.